Welcome to the Novi Board of Education regular meeting for January 18th, 2024. If you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda. But before we do that, I'd like to, based on the audience here, if we can move the celebrations up to number 4 from number 6. Move it on up in there with that one amendment. Does anybody object to that?
No, do you need a motion to present?
Well, we just need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. Moved by Mrs. Goldwine, supported by Mr. Mena. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 7-0. That brings us to celebrations. Mr. Manka.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And this is a really excellent board meeting because it's an opportunity. I know that none of the 7 of you asked for this, but this is something that we started last year, and I think it's an opportunity to recognize the work that you do as a school board. Our school board members volunteer countless hours. A lot of it is behind the scenes as they're reviewing informational packets and thinking through the decisions that they have to make on the behalf of our students and our staff and our community. And so recognizing that this month in January is National Local School Board Month, I'd like to read a resolution that we'll ask you to approve here in a little bit. And then we have a couple other things that we're going to do to celebrate you. So the resolution will read, whereas Michigan is home to more than 600 Board of Educations that work to enrich the lives of Michigan students through education and directly influence instruction in Michigan's public schools, and whereas Article 8, Section 2 of the Michigan Constitution of 1963 states that providing for the education of Michigan's children is a fundamental duty of state government, and whereas local school board members represent their community to ensure the educational opportunities are provided and the children and young adults in their community will advance student achievement in the schools and communities in which they serve. And whereas during this month we join with the Michigan Association of School Boards, the Michigan Department of Education, local school districts, and community organizations to recognize and raise awareness of the countless efforts and contributions of local school boards and school board members throughout Michigan. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Novi Community School District, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2024 as Local School Board Month and honor the contribution of the Novi Community School District School Board members Paul Cook, Danielle Ruskin, Marianne Roney, Willie Mena, Tom Smith, Betsy Bodwine, and Jason Mishner. If we could all just give our board a round of applause. One of the things that I think is really neat is that our building principals and leaders from different departments have worked with their staff and their students, and they have some special surprises. Some that weren't able to be here tonight, which I will speak on their behalf, but we'll go ahead and let, there's not an organized order, so any of you can kind of come up, but we'll start with Orchard Hills, it looks like.
We get Cooper.
And Cooper, yes. Judy Cooper. He is the wow factor, always. So I won't be before you long. Just wanted to take a moment to just really thank you all for all of the hard work that you do. This is a thankless job. You govern policy. You make decisions that some people are happy with and some people are not. And there are times where you probably don't feel very appreciated. And we want to make sure that we show you how much we appreciate every decision you make and how much time you spend carefully considering those decisions, that they're not haphazard, they're not fly-by-night, that you really think about the safety of our children, the well-being of our children, the future of all of our children, and we appreciate that. So I originally thought this was going to be a 7 o'clock meeting, and I didn't want kids to be here, so we made a video of our kids, and I would like to present it to you now.
I got it. Hold on.
Thank you for letting Mr. Micah make snow day decisions all winter long.
We could use one any day now. Thank you for loving our school district and giving us so much of your time.
Thank you for approving the funds
for all our books in the library and cool technology.
Thank you for the contract negotiations
That keep our awesome teachers at school.
Thank you for hiring Mrs. Danforth to be our principal.
Thank you for allowing Cooper to join our school as a full-time student.
Thank you for improving the playground over the summer.
Thank you for letting us start school after Labor Day, even if it was for the last time.
Thank you for approving funds for school buses and bus drivers to bring us to school every day.
Thank you for approving the calendar.
That'll give us the day off after Halloween.
Thank you for approving the field trip to Lansing for all 4th grade.
Thank you for giving us 2 weeks off of school,
So we can have family time.
And start the year fresh.
Thank you, Mrs. Woodline. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Thank you, Mr. Manna. Thank you, Mr. Minchner. Thank you, Mrs. Rooney. Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
We would just like to thank the school board for all that you do on behalf of our students and our families. Thank you for always doing what's best for students and kids. And we just appreciate every hard decision that you have to make. Thank you so much. So that's just you. And you know, on those days where you spent a lot of time here and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, we wanted you to have something to reflect on, and people really do appreciate you. And we also have on the table.
You can pass it out, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I would like for you, if you want to, keep this in the boardroom. And on those days where you're feeling a little underappreciated, just reach in. We have notes from our Orchard Hills students and staff where they've drawn, the little kids drew pictures, the bigger kids made notes. And so there are notes in here for you all to, just when you're feeling a little underappreciated, to pull one out, to understand that even in those moments, people do appreciate all of the hard work that you put in. And I have 400 of them, so I didn't put all 400 of them. So when I come for note meetings, I'll refill it for you. And so that'll always be here in the boardroom for you guys to just remember and reflect on why you do what you do. And we also have keychains that Ms. Welch, our social worker, will give to you. That with our Orchard Hills Wildcats we wore, that's our PBIS we wore. So we want to make sure that you have a token to put on your keychain to always remember some of the students that you make your decisions for. So we thank you so much and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Who's next? Want to do middle school? Okay. Woods?
Okay. I knew that the meeting was at 6 o'clock, so we. So no matter what, I'd love to thank you for everything that you do, all of the decisions that you make. We know that it is a difficult job, and so 1 month of appreciation definitely does not cover it. But what we have here is we have 3rd and 4th graders from our Novi Woods Gardening Club. They would like to present you with some cards that the 1st graders made for you. And then they have some flowers that we wish we could say were from our garden, but the weather is not agreeing with that right now. So, kids, if you'd like to go on out.
Thanks for coming to our meeting.
Thank you.
Me too. I was like, who's taking it?
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for coming to the meeting.
Thank you so very much.
Did you take that flower from my thing for your hair?
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
What's your favorite song?
And your name is? June. And are those for me too? Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Can I have you have them?
On the last moment, I will speak on my other fronts behalf too. We echo the other K4 sentiments. We appreciate all that you do, being in our building, supporting our kids, sitting here late, doing all of the behind the scenes reviewing of those board packets that are very long. So we really appreciate that you give your extra time to support all of our kids and make sure that this is an amazing place for them to be. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also thought it was at 7, so we don't have kids, but next time we'll know.
Maybe we'll have a bigger boardroom for them.
Now we know, you know it. Clearly, Alice knows what she's doing.
Might be 5:30, but.
How about 4:30?
I'll share with Danielle, she's right, I saw her.
He's gonna share.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Wow.
As my grandmother would say, try it on.
Nice. Oh, nice.
Thank you.
So next, we're gonna have Mrs. Holly come up and, pick out the, I believe Parkview did some survival kits. They're goodie bags for board members that are, made by the students in the art class.
Aren't you right in the center? You see that black bag.
Board meeting survival.
Their board meeting and board member survival kits. So,
Those would be two
yeah,
different
so
things.
those are from Parkview, and Mrs. Murphy sent her best. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it tonight.
Dude, I like this.
Is it candy?
Like gum.
I think Deerfield has something there too, Mrs. Holly.
Oh, I love it. Lifesavers to remind you that you are one. Tootsie Rolls to help you roll with the punches. Starbucks for a burst of energy when you need one. Peppermint candies to help you keep your cool. Snickers to remind you to keep sensitive. Bubble gum to help you with sticky situations.
You can go ahead. Yeah, pass out Deerfields.
Thank you. Oh, did you read this?
Since you can't eat any candy.
I eat candy. It's hard to have candy every night. You just have so much. Thank you.
So I think we've covered all the elementary, so,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Meadows has a picture that they made taking pictures from the old building, which is kind of a creative idea. So they're picture frames. There they are. So that you'll have a picture of some of the scenes from the old Novi Meadows that will no longer be the old Novi Meadows anymore. Which I thought was a pretty creative thing, and obviously Mr. Bricky and Ms. Fenchel send their best as well.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Baker's here tonight to present.
I'm gonna invite Ms. Carter to join me from the secondary team. We could not get students, they only come if the meeting's at 9 or 10 p.m. But we wanted to, once again, thank you guys for all of the time that goes unnoticed, uncounted, and time away from your families for helping to guide our districts and lead us to be a really fabulous place to learn and work and be. And so,
Yeah, so on behalf of the 2,100 students at Novi High School and the
the
phenomenal
1100
200
middle
staff,
school.
we'd just like to express our sincere gratitude for your service and your sacrifice. Without you, our school district would not be what it is today. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicole, thanks, Rob.
So at the high school, we are going to be providing you with a tumbler. As you know, high school students these days have a tendency to either choose one of two beverages, either water or coffee. So this one will be for each of you, as well as two neat Novi ornaments that you'll be able to utilize, or a decal that you can put up in your vehicle.
Sweet.
And then, of course, Novi had polio. Anyone that knows me knows that I love to take copious notes. But my students and staff also love to take copious notes as well. So you'll each get one of those.
And the middle school is bringing you a Novi Middle School long sleeve
Thank you.
t-shirt.
Ooh, very sweet. Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Thank you. So sweet. This is what I need.
And I believe Miss Patel is here as well, special education.
Thank you.
Take a break for her 50th birthday tour?
Yes.
So
Thank you.
on behalf of NATC, I'm here to present to you these wonderful coffee cups that the kids make, because we know you guys have really late evenings. We put Novi for All because we support all of the inclusive opportunities that this district provides for all of our kids from birth to age 26. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you.
And I think Mr. Wachowski's here.
Right?
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
This has me thinking about running for board.
At least one spot open.
I just want to thank you for really your attention and your focus to the whole child. I do feel like our extracurricular departments, our opportunities we provide students beyond the school day is truly second to none, and I know that each one of you play a significant role in making that happen, from just things as simple as opportunities, games, transportation, and then things as big as facilities, which we do it well here, we do it better than any, so thank you so much for that opportunity. And to really just provide you something to keep you warm on these cold days, we've got Novi athletic hoodies, athletic department hoodies that I'd like to hand out.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Kramer's here, I think, too. Adult ed?
Adult ed and alternative, so
Yeah.
career prep. So as everyone already said, I'd like to echo thank you for all that you do. Thank you especially from our alternative learners and our adult learners. I don't know if many of you know, but there aren't very many programs out there. And we are very thankful for your support for both of our alternative and our adult ed ESL specifically program. It's a huge program and many of our community members benefit from it. So thank you for always supporting us. We have gratitude rocks that we'll be passing around, so you guys can pick which rock you want. Our art students and a few other crafty students made these for you. So they hand painted them all, and they all have different sayings, so you can pick which one you want. And then everybody loves food, so pick which candy bar you think is the best. And I can bring some food too, so I'll pass that around.
Thank you.
Excellent.
You start over here.
I know, I was like,
Age before beauty.
And then Mrs. Holly, I think we
what
had.
you're gonna say over there, Mr. Smith?
That was Danielle.
I think we had ECEC as well.
what
I think
candy
we
bar
have
did you want?
ECEC
I'm
as
gonna
well.
take it.
Great. Although I've seen Tom in the photos,
Thank you.
So our students at the Early Childhood Education Center also made you,
Thank you.
put their fingerprints on a little keepsake for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is so sweet.
I got a Tom.
This is from my daughter's class.
And a bed.
That's what I was like, I have to-
It's on the bed right on top. You too.
Some of them were.
Back in the names. I like chocolate with nuts. I'll go for this one.
So hopefully you feel appreciated. It's a special
Yes.
occasion that we get to recognize you at least once a year. And happy School Board Appreciation Month, and thank you for all that you do. Yeah. Oh, we have some. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
I got Kim.
You're just feeling a little
I was ready to
envy
go,
over
sorry.
here. You're rushing
That's right. Sorry about that. I couldn't see him.
Come on.
Okay. You want to tell them all?
Oh, food service, have these bags all full of nice kinds of treats and goodies.
Oh my God.
So you guys are gonna have all kinds of feasts.
Gonna have to go on a diet after this.
Ooh, it sounds like there's wine in there.
Oh, how awesome is that?
I know, right?
I got a chart that says I love you.
There's a lot left, Tom. I don't know what to do.
Oh my gosh.
Is there wine in here?
I like you.
Of course. You're cool. That one's for you.
Mary Ann, just ask for your stipend this month.
For the wine?
This is awesome.
You go ahead.
These are from the ESB, and these have vintage items in them that will be worth millions one day. See, we have the old Novi logo candy dishes.
Oh.
Yes.
Steve's nameplate's in there, isn't it?
And then also, you each get a vintage coffee cup from but inside this, you will get our new logo lanyard, a new logo, this can hold whatever you want, you can hooks on your belt. So, and then this is an 8 gig flash drive and it's got our new logo on it. So the old meets the new.
Thank you so much.
I like this one for you.
Thank you.
And you notice how I did green for the men and white for the women? Just like we got, well, we all do.
Yeah. And how, we also have Novi Virtual, right? So,
Yeah.
all right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Klemke, and I'm the Director of Instruction here, but I also support our virtual program. And we have two of our wonderful, a small but mighty virtual teacher team, and they're going to go ahead and pass out for you our gift. And since we did this last year, we realized you might need something to hold all the goodies that your team So,
Perfect.
Mrs. Loney made these wonderful canvas bags for you, and you'll notice they have our aperture on them surrounding our Novi logo to represent the fact that we at Virtual open and close to take care of kids when they need it. And I just wanted to say thank you to this board for helping us think forward about how we can flexibly take care of the unique needs of the students in our district, some of which are sometimes have to be in other countries. So it's really nice that we have this unique program to take care of our kids. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much.
We are ready.
Ready?
Yeah. Hopefully you feel appreciated.
We do.
I don't know if you want to
do a quick
do a
break?
recess.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to say thank you to all you guys. Without everybody that's in this room, throughout the community, I don't think that we would be up here doing this. And it kind of humbles me to think that we're in the position we are. And, it basically comes from you, not from us, but it comes from you. The students working hard, the teachers giving it their all, with differentiated instruction and the administration by helping guide the teachers and taking care of everything. So without you guys, we wouldn't be here. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with that, we can take like a 5-minute recess and let the kids get home and do some homework because it's coming up to the end of the semester. So
Thank you.
let's take a little 5-minute recess. Let's be back at 7:30.
Really, that's a great place.
Grab a strawberry on the way out.
Too busy eating.
There we go. Okay, welcome back. We, moving on to the next, the student board representative report. Jennifer had something come up and she's unable to join us, so we'll see if we can get her written report and distribute that. And then let's move on to reports to the board. Mr. Micah.
Thank you. We annually have, actually it used to be every other year, but this year in some of the work sessions and discussions with board members, it was suggested that we have a refresher every January if possible to talk about your annual training on FERPA, FOIA, OMA, all of the above. Many of you have had the opportunity to meet Jennifer Starlin. She's one of our district attorneys, and excited tonight to hear her presentation and then offer you the opportunity to ask questions if necessary. Thank you.
All right. Well, I know you guys got a lot of good stuff tonight. This is gonna take Good to see everybody again. I think I've met you all at some point over the last year or two. I was here about this time last year talking about a couple different topics. I think last year we may have done Title IX and FERPA, so we're going to talk a little bit about FOIA and OMA today. As we jump in and talk about this topic, both of these topics, Ben has asked me to limit it to 20 to 30 minutes. We could spend several hours on each of these, but he assured me that that's nothing you were interested in doing and nothing that the public was really that interested in hearing. So these are just some of the highlights, but understand that there are some nuances that can't be covered in 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to start off with the Open Meetings Act and some basics with the OMA. You're all very familiar with it. That's why we have open meetings like the one we're at right now. The purpose of the Open Meetings Act is basically to shed light on what the government is doing. The Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, are both called sunshine laws. And that name comes from the idea that we want to shed light on what's going on in government. And since school boards are an arm of the government, you are subject to the Open Meetings Act to make sure that the public can understand what's going on and how decisions are made, and therefore be educated when they vote for the people who they want to elect to make those decisions. Now, the operative language within the Open Meetings Act has a couple of buzzwords. So, all meetings of a public body must be open to the public and must be held in a place available to the general public. So, as we break that down, open to the public, it's not enough to just have a meeting here and not tell anybody about it. Part of the idea that it's open to the public involves that notice and posting. So you guys could all agree to have a meeting here, but if you don't tell anyone about it, it's not open to the public. Also has to be held in a place available to the general public. There is one exception where there are certain circumstances where you could have an open meeting at someone's residence. I've never had a school board want to do that, and if any of you ever want to have a meeting at your home, we can talk about the specifics of that. It does still have to be open to the public. So again, I've not had anyone want to go down that route. Everybody is allowed to attend a meeting open to the public unless they commit a breach of the peace at that meeting. So you can't preemptively ban somebody from attending a public meeting. And if you have a person who wants to come to the meeting and breach the peace, and you know they're going to do that because they did it at the last 10 meetings, you still have to wait for them to breach the peace at that meeting and then ask them to leave. And every open meeting has to have the opportunity for public comment. That's a component of the idea of being open to the public. A public body, a school board counts as a public body, but this is the definition from the statute. Now, there's a couple of cases that have further interpreted what it means to be a public body. Obviously, the elected school board, yes, you're a public body. I don't think that anybody disputes that. An individual acting in an executive capacity is not a public body. Ben, as the superintendent, is not a public body. Ben's meetings do not have to be open to the public. They're not subject to the Open Meetings Act. Delegation of board authority, this is an issue we get a lot of questions on. If a committee is authorized to take action in place of the board or to make decisions that the board would otherwise make, then that committee is subject to the Open Meetings Act. If they have no decision-making authority, and they can't narrow choices or otherwise decide on policy, then they wouldn't be subject to the Open Meetings Act. So it really depends on how you run your committees. And some schools have committees that they run as being subject to the Open Meetings Act because they do have some decision-making authority. Others are purely advisory, and they would not be subject to the Open Meetings Act. And as I mentioned before, if we have a board, a committee that makes that recommendation to the board, and the board then deliberates it on at an open meeting, or if the board asks for input from somebody that's not on the board, that wouldn't necessarily be subject to the Open Meetings Act as long as the board makes that decision and has that discussion about it in an open meeting. Conferences and workshops, these are generally not subject to the Open Meetings Act. So you all can go to the MASB conference, for example. You can listen to me speak about library books. And I know at least one of you was at MASB this fall and did hear me speak on that. If there was a quorum of you that attended a conference like that, that's allowed. You don't have to post it as an open meeting. But while you're there, you can't meet as a quorum and discuss policy. You have to be focused on getting the information, obviously not making those decisions that would impact the district or that would otherwise constitute deliberation. So making sure that you're very intentional, that, you know, we can talk about the content of the workshop or the conference that we're at. We can talk about our kids and what they're doing at school, but we shouldn't be talking about board business at that conference or workshop. Now, a meeting is defined under the Open Meetings Act as the convening of a public body at which a quorum is present, so at least 4, for the purpose of deliberating toward or rendering a decision on a public policy. The traditional sense of the meeting, of the word meeting, is what we're in right now. It's a meeting, you're sitting here, you might talk about some policy at some point, maybe you'll just get more gifts, I don't know. This is a great meeting. But that's the purpose of the meeting. Once we saw sort of an increase in the use of technology, however, we did start getting a couple of decisions about they originally started as phone calls. Now we see some decisions about emails and text messages. So really important to remember that deliberation has to take place at the public meeting. And when we have somebody sending an email to the board and there's a reply all, and we're talking about policy, or it's happening through text messages, that could inadvertently violate the Open Meetings Act, because you could end up having a quorum that is deliberating on something related to policy outside of a public meeting, because it's happening via email or on via text message, or I don't know, maybe you all are Snapchatting each other, I don't know. But that's important to remember that, you know, if it gets to the point where we're having those back and forth conversations, best course of action is for somebody to say, okay, you know, there's too many people weighing in on this email thread, we need to talk about this at the meeting. Electronic meetings. This has been sort of an interesting little pendulum swing that we've seen. So back in the 90s, there was an attorney general opinion that said that a board member could attend a public meeting via, I think the phrase was interactive television. So, I mean, this is like the 90s version of Zoom. Interactive television, and that wouldn't violate the Open Meetings Act as long as the board member could hear what's being said and the public could hear what the board member was saying. And that was that's what we operated under from the 90s until COVID. And when COVID happened, there was a question about, okay, we have an AG opinion that's not necessarily binding, but very persuasive, and we've been following it for 30-ish years. And that says that a board member could attend a meeting through interactive TV or the modern equivalent, but there wasn't anything that addressed could the entire meeting be held virtually. So when COVID first happened, I believe it was through an executive order that the governor said, yes, boards, you can have fully electronic meetings. The law was subsequently amended. And it's a little bit backwards because now, since 2020 and COVID, I think everybody's a lot better versed in how to use some of these interactive meeting options like Zoom, like Teams, like Google Meet. But now, under the Open Meetings Act, we can only allow a member or members to attend virtually if they're absent due to military duty. Now, there were other exceptions, but those have sunsetted under the law. It used to be because of a state of emergency, and then there was also about a board member's health condition. All of those have since sunsetted, and now it's only a board member who's absent due to military duty. Military duty is not defined, generally understood to be, are you deployed domestically or internationally? Only the absent member or members can attend remotely, and the Open Meetings Act electronic meeting rules and procedures apply. So we're in this interesting position where, you know, back in the 90s, we could have somebody join via interactive television, even though none of us really understood how to use it. And yet now that we've all learned how to use this technology, the Open Meetings Act doesn't really allow for that type of participation, except in very limited circumstances. Now, the public also has rights at a public meeting. They can attend. We've already talked about that. They can tape record it. That's the language from the statute. I don't think we tape record anymore, but otherwise record or video record. They can also broadcast the meeting or telecast the meeting. You know, when the Open Meetings Act was enacted, I think they would probably envision like somebody rolling in a big video camera and somehow recording it that way. Now we see people doing it on their phones more than anything else. So that is the public right, although we can put rules in place that it can't disrupt the meeting. So if they want to set up, take up half the room to set up some really big streaming equipment, that could be something where some reasonable rules could address that. And I mentioned at every public meeting, we have to allow for public comment. The board can set rules that are established and recorded and say these are our rules for public comment. Now you can require a speaker to register. Most boards do, because then you can call people up and say the next person is, Jennifer Starling, come up to the podium. You can't require attendees to register as a condition of walking into this meeting. Somebody has to be allowed to walk in anonymously and sit in the back and listen if they're so inclined to do so. You can also put reasonable limits on the duration of each comment, and you can determine when in the agenda public comment occurs. So do you want it at the beginning? Do you want it in the middle? Do you want it at the end? Do you want 1? Do you want 2? Do you want 5? That's all within the board's discretion as long as there is at least one public comment period. Now, any rules that we put on public comment, they're supposed to be designed to be reasonable, flexible, and to encourage public expression, not discourage or prohibit it. So you want to make sure that any rules you put in place are not so burdensome that a court might find that they essentially discourage people from participating in public comment. Now, I mentioned this a little bit already, but you cannot exclude a person from attending a public meeting except for a breach of the peace committed at that meeting or at every single meeting. I've not seen that pattern happen before, but I suspect it probably has in some places. Now, we start with the presumption that the entire meeting has to be open. If we want to go into closed session, we have to identify the statutory basis that allows us to go into closed session. And we have the Open Meetings Act lists what all of those exemptions are that allow you to go into closed session. So I always tell boards, anytime you're thinking about going into closed session, look at Section 8 of the Open Meetings Act and figure out which section is allowing us to go into closed session. There are several that are commonly used. One is for example, I go into closed session with a lot of boards for student disciplinary matters. That's a specific exemption under the Open Meetings Act. To discuss material exempt by statute, including a legal opinion letter. You're allowed to go into closed session to discuss that. There are some ways to get into closed session regarding purchase of property, collective bargaining. Those are some of the examples we see more commonly with school boards. But anytime we go into closed session, there has to be a basis for that under Section 8 of the Open Meetings Act. Now, while you can go into closed session and deliberate, any decisions have to be made back in open session. So the example that I see a lot, again, going back to the student discipline closed session, you go into closed session, you have a student discipline hearing. You can't decide what the discipline is in closed session. You decide what the discipline is when you get into open session, if the board handles student discipline hearings. But in that case, you wouldn't identify the student by name because that would violate FERPA. So that's one example of the difference between deliberation and decision. But any decisions have to be made at a public meeting. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about FOIA, but does anyone have any OMA questions specifically right now?
A couple of quick ones. So if you go into a closed session, is it always understood that you have to call to order and adjourn in an open meeting? In other words, closed sessions are only a section of an open meeting?
Yes. So if you're in closed session, and frankly, oftentimes it ends up being a bit of a formality because I've been with boards many times where by the time you get out of closed session, there's no one left in the open meeting. But yes, okay, we're back in open session now, and now a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And what is a breach of peace? Can you define that for us?
There's not a legal definition, but I would say that somebody who is acting in a way that is so disruptive that you're unable to run the meeting or people can't hear. If somebody's yelling and they are continuing to interrupt. And because there's this, presumption that people should be allowed to and are allowed to attend public meetings and participate, unless it's very egregious, at the first part, usually the board president would say, I need you to be quiet, stop interrupting, there's a time for public comment. If I have to warn you again, you're going to be asked to leave. That would be breaching the peace and giving that person a warning and an opportunity. That's not necessarily going to be true in every case. If there was a very egregious incident, they might just be asked to leave. But it's something that would be extraordinarily disruptive and would really prevent the board from conducting its business, which is the purpose of the board meeting.
And two more really quick ones. So the only way we could have a virtual meeting is if we were all on military duty at the same time.
And deployed.
Otherwise, there's always got to be a physical meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As of right now, though I've seen a couple of things pop up in the legislature here and there where somebody, proposes some legislation to change that. We don't have any yet, but I think the last couple of years, something's at least been proposed and then kind of died. But as of right now, yes, if you all get deployed, you can have a fully virtual meeting.
And then my last one, which is the technical one, for meetings and in terms of what discussion is. It's my understanding, obviously, you can't have a quorum, but more than that, I couldn't talk to a board member, get their opinion, talk to another board member, share that opinion with that board member, and kind of go down the line so I can have a discussion with every board member, figure it all out in private. But I could ask each board member how they felt about something, but I would have to be very careful not to reveal any other board member's opinion or thoughts to the next board member when I talk to them. Did I state that correctly?
That's probably accurate if you're just seeking information. What are your thoughts? I'm as an individual board member trying to get information, like where I'm looking at different perspectives, and what's yours. that's probably okay. But anytime there's something that could be interpreted as round robining, I get a little nervous as the attorney because I worry that it's very easy to, email's a very common form of communication, and, you start hitting reply all 2-3 times, and it may start as something like, I'm trying to get your opinion, and then it turns into something more. So I'm always, very cautious about that, and would encourage all of our boards to err on the side of, if it starts to get into any sort of where people want to weigh in, reserve it for the open board meeting. And I think it happens inadvertently a lot. A lot of times what I see is, one board member says, I'm going to be absent at the board meeting, and I'm emailing the rest of the board and telling them, these are my thoughts on this particular issue. And that's perfectly fine, and that's acceptable. But then another board member may ask a clarifying question and also kind of weigh in on their opinion. And now we've got this reply all beast that has morphed into deliberations. And that's where boards need to be careful. I like the blind copy function because then you can't reply all. Like, it's a one-way communication. Here's the information, and nobody can reply all. I'm sending out my one-way communication to everybody.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Thank you. So, clarifying question based on what Mr. Mishner was saying. It is completely acceptable, I just want to confirm, like, if I, as a board member, were to discuss the NEF donation, which is an action item, or it's an item on our agenda, with Mary Ann, I could say, oh, isn't that wonderful that they have donated this thing? There's no problem there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we just couldn't, like, strategize and discuss and, okay.
Well, and really, I mean, technically, if 2 board members are talking outside of an open meeting, that's not a quorum.
Okay.
So when we have a quorum deliberating, but again, in the interest of transparency, you still always want to be, if you have those conversations, it's a good idea to, at least when you get to the public meeting, say, we did discuss this, and, here were some thoughts that we kind of came up with, the 2 of us. And again, that's just another layer of transparency.
Okay. So it would then be like acceptable if I were to say, oh, I'm not super sure how comfortable I am with whatever this is. What do you think? And she could share her thoughts with me, and we could kind of get to an understanding between the 2 of us. Okay, great. Thank you. And another example that actually just happened a couple days ago is one of our teachers sent something to me and asked me to send it to the board. And generally speaking, we do not email each other.
Okay, good
so
practice.
I said, oh, you should send it to the board, and then remembered after that we actually have a policy that we're not supposed to answer emails that come to Board of Ed that is directed to just our president to respond. So in that situation, I think you're saying that it would have been appropriate for me to just do a blind copy to the board so they could not reply to me but could respond to that teacher? Is that correct?
Legally, that would be okay, but practically, I would encourage you to send it to the board president, and then Paul can decide, this is how I want to disseminate that, whether it's via email or whether it's via printed copies at a meeting, or, whether he needs to talk to Ben about, hey, what's the background here? Okay. That's usually best practice to have everything go through the board president.
This specific one, I think I blew out of proportion because it was an invitation to an event at the school. So I think in this situation, my desire to follow the rules may have been excessive. So like for something like that, that could be just, hey, just so you know this is going on and you can come. That would be an appropriate thing to do. Fantastic. And then my final question, because I believe another trustee on this board may require clarification. Is it okay if we had a group text to wish each other a happy Thanksgiving, or would that be a major rule violation? What happened?
Your a happy Thanksgiving text is not
our favorite kind of pie.
Is not deliberating on matters of public policy. I don't know why I had a suspicion as to who that would be. Was
that a breach of peace?
No, I think that's all right. No, that's fine, because again, that's not about board business. If it's Happy Thanksgiving, also let's not buy that Novi Meadows AV screen, because I didn't like the gift that they gave us for board day. Then that would be inappropriate. But yeah, a Happy Thanksgiving is sufficient.
Thank you so much for explaining that for us.
us.
Yeah.
Do you want your candy back, Tom?
No. I'll text you.
I had, when you were mentioning about the committees, and a committee that narrows down choices could ultimately violate OMA. And so we just went through your policy manual, and there were options, and some of those options got narrowed down by committee. So I think they still, both options came to the full board, but, so something like that would be basically an act of deliberation. There's only 3 members there, narrowing the choices that the full board gets to see.
If it does, and it really depends on how you do this, and I don't know for sure how you guys do your policy committee, but I know, you know, if you go through the manual and you're circling like, we think this is the better choice versus this one, then that's fine. The board can say, no, I disagree. I think the other choice is better.
As long as they're both presented.
Yes, that would be fine. But we also have, speaking specifically to, you know, the policies themselves. I mean, sometimes we have like an administrator kind of go through and do their recommendation to the full board, and it's not made up of board members at all. So how committees are a really nuanced issue where it really gets in, you can really get into the weeds on what exactly are they allowed to do, what is their task, is it a delegation of the board's duty, and what does the full board see. And so when I talk to districts about committees, it really varies from district to district, and you know how you do a committee in one district might look very similar to your neighboring district, but one might be subject to the OMA and one might not be. So if we have any concerns about that, I'm happy to chat, and Ben and I can figure out, like, you know, do we have concerns about how committees are operating? But in that specific scenario, you know, if the whole board has access to, you know, the full packet and the original version, which I believe they did, and then the committee says, these are all of our recommendations, then I don't view that as being that committee's actions as being a violation of the OMA.
Okay, recommendations as long as all other options are presented.
Yep.
Are there any other questions on OMA?
All right. Well, now, my next favorite topic, FOIA. FOIA is a law that's near and dear to my heart. We've had, I have helped a couple of districts muddle through several hundred FOIA requests over the course of a couple of years. It's been something that we've seen. It really picked up kind of around COVID and in the couple of years after, knock on wood. I don't know if schools are just becoming better at processing FOIA requests. They don't call me as much, or if it's died down a little bit. Now that I said that, it will probably pick back up. There will be 30 in my inbox when I leave here. But it's certainly something that's important to get right. We have seen an increase in the number of court cases that are coming out of the Michigan Court of Appeals that deal with FOIA, which means more people are getting sued over FOIA because we're getting more decisions and then they're going up to the Court of Appeals. Generally, FOIA is again, another sunshine statute, and there's a pro-disclosure presumption. So we start with the idea that every record in the district is subject to disclosure. Kind of like with the OMA, all meetings are open unless we have a specific reason to go into closed session. Under FOIA, everything's public unless there's a reason, a statutory basis to say that this record or a portion of this record is not subject to disclosure. And those exemptions, just like under the OMA, are listed specifically under FOIA. Now, FOIA's request requirements are pretty minimal. It has to be a written request. It has to describe a public record sufficiently to enable the public body to find it. And then we have to allow the person to either receive a copy or come in and inspect and review, and if they choose to, copy public records. Some of the exemptions under FOIA that we use most in the school setting, FERPA protected information. So I know I've talked to you guys about FERPA before. That's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And that protects from disclosure student record information, basically almost all student information other than what your board has delegated as directory information. And under FOIA, there's even more restrictions in that there are steps you have to take before you even disclose directory information in response to a FOIA request. Information subject to the attorney-client privilege does not have to be disclosed. Social security numbers cannot be disclosed. That would violate the law. Information of a personal nature, if it would result in a clearly unwarranted invasion of privacy that outweighs the public interest in disclosure, and information that's specifically exempt by statute. Now, Section 13 of FOIA contains that full list. There's a lot in there that you probably won't use all that much. The exact location of archaeological dig sites, for example. I don't know if Novi Schools is in possession of that, but there are other government agencies that are, and you can't FOIA that. You also can't FOIA test questions and answers. So those savvy students that want to, get ahead on their final studying, that's exempt from specifically under FOIA. And there are several exemptions like that, but these are kind of the ones that I see most frequently. Now, a couple of decisions we had a recent decision, this one was just from last year, and this is about whether somebody's name is private information. And the context of this is, you may remember University of Michigan's president had a little bit of an issue and left. There was a FOIA request for the name of the employee that he had the affair, I don't know if I want to call it an affair, but had the relationship with that resulted in him leaving. And the university denied that request under Section 13(1)A and said that's private information. And the individual who filed this lawsuit has filed a number of FOIA lawsuits across the state and argued that somebody's name isn't private. And it went up to the Court of Appeals, and the court said somebody's name by itself is not personal private information. My name's not personal. But if that disclosure of my name would provide intimate, embarrassing, private, or confidential information, and it would fail to provide insight into the government operations or activities, then a public body could exempt that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting case because I've never really seen a situation where somebody's name might be viewed as private, but obviously that was a specific example. Now, I will say that certain information in personnel records, including some employee discipline records, this exemption would not apply to because the public is allowed to understand how and when public employees receive discipline in some cases. So it doesn't automatically mean anytime you do anything that you might be embarrassed about that your name could be exempt under FOIA. You have to do the two-part analysis. Would revealing the identity provide any insight into government operations or activities? In this case, it wouldn't, and it would be embarrassing. Email in FOIA. This comes up all the time, and back in 2010, there was a case, our firm handled it, where the district, Howell School District, received a FOIA request for emails on the district server about basically internal union communication. So union members emailing about union business using their school emails. And the district was like, well, it's on our server, so we kind of feel like maybe we have to provide it. And the union was like, oh, no, you're not providing that. So there was a friendly lawsuit filed, as friendly as lawsuits can be, but to decide the question and to determine can the district exempt these? And the court said FOIA was not intended to render all personal emails public records simply because they happen to be captured in the district's email system. So if they're there, but they don't shed light on what the public body is doing, they might not necessarily be a public record. So that's great and helpful to know, but it's also important to look at it in reverse. You can't avoid FOIA just by not using your district email address. You can't say, well, I'm going to use my private Gmail address, and now if there's ever a FOIA request, I'm safe. It doesn't work like that. If it's a communication about school business and it would meet the definition of a public record, it doesn't matter if you use your Novi email address or your Gmail email address. The reverse is if we get a FOIA request for all of Ben's emails for the last 6 months, it will take a very long time to sort through those, at least 150 attorney hours, and I'm speaking from experience because I've helped with that FOIA request in another district. Most of those emails will be disclosable. But if Ben emailed a relative and said, hey, I'm coming to your kid's birthday party on Saturday, that's not a public record just because it happens to be on the district system. So this actually was the reverse was decided by the Court of Appeals in 2022, and they confirmed what I've been telling clients for many years since the Howell case, that the use of personal devices, services, and accounts in conducting official business is inconsequential under FOIA. So it doesn't matter which email account you use. If it's a public record, it's a public record. And what I tell clients is, you know, if it was as easy as just getting a free Gmail account, your lawyers would have thought of this a long time ago, and we would have been like, hey guys, you know what's gonna save you a lot of time and money? Just never use the school email, and you never have to be subject to FOIA. So that's not the case. I also always tell school employees and board members, because of that, just use your school email, because then if you get a FOIA request in and you have to, you know, help do a search, the technology department can help do that search more easily. You don't have to go in and do a manual search through your Gmail account that might have, you know, 100,000 unread emails, mostly from, you know, places you tried to get 10% off from one time when you shopped online, like my Gmail account has. You don't have to search through that because you know I've only ever done school business on my school account. The time for response. Once we get a request for public records that meets the definition of a FOIA request, we have 5 business days to respond. Now, business days is every day, Monday through Friday, except for state holidays. So Christmas break, that still counts. These are business days, not necessarily school working days. So that is something helpful to know. It also means that if you are in school on a state holiday, it counts as not a business day. Even though you're there and you're working, you use the state holiday calendar when you're calculating the 5 business days. Now within that 5 business days, you have 4 options. Grant the request. Here's the record you're seeking. I'm giving it to you entirely. I've removed nothing. I've redacted nothing. That's a full granting of the request, and you're done. You otherwise could issue a written notice denying the request. You've asked for these records and I'm giving you none of them, or they don't exist. That's a denial. What we see most often is a partial grant, partial denial, and that's here's your stack of records. I had to remove a couple things or redact a couple of things because there was a social security number in there or a few student names, or, you know, within the responsive documents was an attorney-client privilege communication that was removed. The other option is issue a notice extending the response time by not more than 10 business days. If you take the 10 business day response, you can only take 1. It gives you 15 total business days to respond. So those are the options in responding to a FOIA request. A couple of other pieces under FOIA. The law changed a couple of years ago, and now we do need to have a requester's full name and mailing address to be considered a valid FOIA request. That was a statutory change, and the reason for that was After the 2016 presidential election, all of the municipalities in Michigan, and I suspect in other states, got FOIA requests for copies of all of the voted ballots from the presidential election. And they came from just somebody named Emily, no last name, and there was an email address, and it was like Emily123@gmail, it did not identify who it was. And a lot of our local communities spent a lot of time either processing the request or trying to come up with a cost estimate to send back. And I believe it was the Michigan Municipal League after that, pushed very hard to get some additional requirements in, including where is this request coming from? And, if I'm gonna spend all this time trying to figure out, how much it will even cost to process this request and to get a cost estimate out there, then we at least have a right to know who's asking for it. So that is a newer requirement. So any questions on that or on anything else you guys have?
How does that cost estimate part fit with the 5 and 15-day timing?
So what I generally do is, once we've determined that there's going to be a fee charged, we send a written notice granting in part and denying in part the request. Usually it's a partial grant, partial denial. And then I put together language that says that this is the estimated cost. Upon receipt of a 50% deposit, we will process the request, and we estimate that it will be available within X number of days from receipt of the deposit. That approach has been confirmed by the Michigan, I believe it was the Michigan Court of Appeals a few years ago, and they distinguished between granting the request and fulfilling the request and noted that there could be a distinction there. So that's often the approach we take, and then that way, when we have these gigantic requests that are going to be thousands and thousands of pages, at least there's been some deposit provided before we spend a lot of taxpayer money processing the request just for somebody to say, oh, no, never mind, I'm not going to pay for that, and all of your time was wasted. So you do have to put some time into putting that good faith cost estimate together, but that's oftentimes the approach that's used so that there's some security. It not always. Sometimes, we say that your request is granted and we have the records ready and it's going to cost this much, but generally that's the approach that we take.
Any other questions?
You mentioned employee records. Could you speak a little more about that and what is and is not FOIA-able in that context?
So everything's FOIA-able if it exists. Whether we disclose it or it's exempt depends on what the record is. When I look at employee files, so somebody FOIAs somebody's personnel file, for example. Personnel files are subject to FOIA, but there's a lot of information in there that would have to be removed or redacted. Home addresses, home phone numbers, those can be exempted under 13(1)A, social security numbers if they exist. Other personal information that wouldn't shed light on what's going on in the district would be things like medical benefit elections or, what is being taken out for retirement from my paycheck, or whether, my ex-wife is garnishing my wages, or whether, I elect 26 pay periods or 22 or whatever the case may be. So a lot of that information either gets removed or, redacted with the black marker. When we talk about employee discipline, a lot of that, we have to look at both FOIA and the Bullard-Plawecki Employee Right to Know Act, because there's some requirements about what cannot or can be in an employment file and some timelines on that. But there are Court of Appeals decisions out there that say that performance of and possibly I think a Michigan Supreme Court case that says how a public employee is performing is subject to the public has a right to know. So a lot of the evaluations are subject to disclosure. And like I said, in a lot of cases, discipline would be as well. And every employment file, you have to go through page by page. Those are just some of the common examples that come to mind.
But if somebody said, like there's an issue with this teacher, and generally speaking, it would seem our response would be to say, you know, we've handled it to the appropriate way, and that information's not public of how things are addressed. You're saying that that is something people could FOIA?
You could FOIA. Mm-hmm.
One thing to expound on that question just a little bit is not everything that happens through the corrective action process goes into a personnel file.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you know, there's different levels potentially of where something might occur, right? So a verbal warning, for example, right,
Okay.
may not, but as soon as I create a record that the district maintains,
Mm-hmm.
that would be considered a FOIable document.
So that would most likely just be occurring with like a more serious situation.
Right.
Not so much like there was a parent complaint that you're giving out too much homework or something like that. Is
That's
that
exactly right,
correct?
yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And there are also rules under state law about what can and can't go in the employment file. That's under Bullard-Plewecki. So the employment files are not, you know, every email that has ever been sent about this employee. They would be huge. This building would be full. So, you know, that's another piece in terms of reviewing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
I
And
appreciate it.
on behalf of Troon, thank you to all your, I don't have any gifts for you like everybody else did, other than the handout. But we always see how hard boards work. We know you guys put in the late hours. Sometimes we're there with you, but you certainly are the ones who take the brunt of the of the backlash when tough decisions have to be made. And we really appreciate all the work you do. So thank you from all of us.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes. And Ben, I'll leave these extra copies back here.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, because needs materials.
Okay, that brings us to next section, comments from the audience. The board respectfully requests that any individual wishing to speak to the board provide their name, address, and any organization they represent. Keep their comments to the allotted time, which is 3 minutes, and refrain from directing comments to individual members of the board, district employees, or members of the audience. Do we have anyone that would like to address the board tonight? Seeing the mad rush, we will continue on. This brings us to consent items. What's that on before that? Consent items are items included of those that previously have been considered by the board in committee or prior meeting, or in such a routine nature that discussion is not required. Board members may request an item be removed from consent items for further discussion. In addition, information is needed if additional information is needed or available. Right now, we only have one item on the consent agenda, which is minutes from the regular meeting of January 11th. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Baudouin.
I move that the Novi Community Schools Board of Education approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Baudouin, seconded by Mr. Ditchner. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 7-0. Brings us to donations, and Mr. Mena.
Yeah, the Novi Education Foundation is presenting a generous donation in the amount of $3,000 for the Therapy Dog Program. We appreciate the NES continued support of our Therapy Dog Program. You saw Cooper in here today. So the recommendation is that the Novi Community School District Board of Education accept the generous donation as presented with appreciation and thanks.
Do I have a motion? Dr. Ruskin.
I move that the Novi Community Schools Board of Education accept the generous donation as presented with appreciation and thanks. Support.
Moved by Dr. Ruskin, supported by Mrs. Roney. Do we have any comments? Mr. Mena.
Well, not regarding that. That must be the first motion I can ever remember Dr. Ruskin making in many, many years. Sitting over here, so it was kind of weird there.
You're like, who's that talking over the other side
I think that's the first one you got on your line in like 4 years, but okay.
Any other questions? I would actually like to say appreciate Cooper being here, which is beneficiary of, some of these funds. Dr. Carino for her work that she has done with therapy dogs, and we appreciate that too. So, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Passes 7-0. Brings us to our action items. First action items, new course offerings at Novi High School. Mr. Micah.
Yeah, so what you're going to see here are going to be 3 separate resolutions for 3 separate courses. We'll start with Math Mentor course proposal. We saw all 3 of these at our last meeting last week. The Math Mentors course proposal is there for your consideration, and hopes that we'll be able to get that passed so that we can put that into the course selection guide for students this next month.
Mr. Mena.
Yeah, I move that the board approve the Math Mentors course as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Ms. Wine. Do we have any questions? This was brought to us last week for information discussion. Any further questions or?
Would you be willing to give a brief summary, either Mr. Cook or Mr. Micah, of what this one is for people who missed our last meeting?
Sure. So Math Mentors is a course where our students will be able to, it's not going to replace any existing courses, but it would be an opportunity for a lot of our students to actually be able to help participate with our MTSS math interventionists and be able to provide some insight into almost providing like a pre-teaching opportunity for some of our students. So really excited about that possibility, and also opens up the possibility for, say, a senior that's looking for a math experience to be able to have a different type of experience than, say, just taking another course that they may have already taken.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries 7-0. Micah.
Next, we have Mechatronics course proposal. This is a course that is going to be the beginning of a very exciting series of courses that's going to be coming in our STEM program. Particularly, Mechatronics is kind of the intro course to a lot of what's going on in today's industry related to robotics, manufacturing, and automation. And so this will be the first in a series of additional classes, which is going to help us with our new robotics lab that's going to be put at Novi High School.
Mr. Mitchell.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the Mechatronics course proposal at the Novi High School as presented.
I support.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Mr. Smith. Again, we were introduced to this last week. Any other questions that have arisen or comments? Mr. Mena.
Just comments. This is exciting. This is something that I know this board has been in discussion with, not just with the current administration, but with the previous administration for many, many years. I believe, and we sort of touched on this last week, I believe as part of this, there is sort of a partnership with Fanuc Robotics as well, and a possibility for students to actually get a certification that has quite a bit of value outside of high school once graduation happens. So this is great, and I'm looking forward to this getting started.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's not really a question. I mean, I'm just really excited about this as well. I feel that, Novi, we needed to get some of that, hands-on stuff where kids that aren't college material could actually do some of these classes and then go out into the real world and succeed. So I very much appreciate this.
Anyone, any other comments? I will say that a lot of the equipment they're using in there, I did not get exposed to until college or afterwards. But I have been exposed to a lot of it, and it's really exciting. And it gives those students a leg up, whether they go to college or don't go to college. So it's, I think it'd be beneficial to more students than we can imagine. So, with that, call question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And the third course for your consideration this evening is a Writing for Publication course proposal. This course would satisfy a full year of ELA credit required by the Michigan Merit Curriculum and will allow students who have taken English 11 to focus on an author's craft. So it's kind of an in-depth opportunity for kids to really focus on how their writing can be published and how they write for those purposes, which is a specific type of craft. So kind of a neat opportunity for our seniors, and that is there for your consideration this evening.
Very good recommendation. Mrs. Rowan.
That the Novi Community School District Board of Ed approves the Writing for Publication course proposal at the Novi High School as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mrs. Roney, supported by Dr. Ruskin. Any questions, concerns, comments? Mrs. Boudoir.
I'm trying to recall, I believe last time we were told this is going to be associated with the yearbook publication and newspaper as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it's allowing almost a convergence or multiple courses being able to kind of be merged into this one.
Oh, wonderful. That makes sense. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be replacing those two, or just in addition?
I believe Mr. Combs is here. Do you want to speak to that question real quick, Mr. Combs?
Yeah, the idea is that it'll probably, over the course of a year or two, replace it, and there are kids who've signed up for those now. But the idea is that it will either be able to replace it, or if it grows beyond that, then you end up, you may be able to populate this and yearbook and newspaper. But for now, the idea is those other two classes aren't really filling. So this is a great way to help kids understand that it's not just about building a yearbook or building a newspaper. It's a transferable skill ready for publication and all these kind of more modern approaches. So for now, it's definitely replacing it. But the hope, I think, of the department is that it will grow interest and it may lead to more populations in those other courses.
Thank you. Any other, Mrs. Boudoir?
So is the main advantage with this format going to be then that this, instead of it being an elective, will count towards their ELA requirements, so that writing that they're doing this class will apply to a grad requirement?
Yep.
Okay.
And they weren't
So
necessary.
many electives,
Right.
and that's an important one. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
No further questions? We'll call two questions. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 7-0. This brings us to Novi Meadows playground discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I was fortunate enough to, over the past week at last week's board meeting, we talked about the New Meadows Playground. I asked Mr. Donnelly to come this evening and share just a little bit of his insight on a few questions, and I'm going to be very technical. I did inquire on the board's behalf about the V-shaped ninja thing. And also wanted to talk a little bit about occupancy level and rating of the playground, as you asked, as well as the site plan and looking at where the basketball courts, green spaces, those types of things are. So, Mr. Donnelly, if you could just give a little insight into those questions.
Sure. I guess the first question on the occupancy of the playground. I did speak to our playground consultant, Ventura, before the meeting, asked him that very question. The answer that I was given is there's really no real calculation that's uniform in the industry, but his calculations on how they do it is that the playground areas themselves should be able to accommodate 300 to 350 students. That does not include the ninja course that is on the documents or the basketball court. So obviously that entire area can accommodate way more students, but just the playground areas themselves, roughly 350. And the other question that was asked of me is, what is the age appropriateness of call it the Ninja V? I think it's the identical piece of equipment that we have over at Village Oaks, and it's 5 to 12. That's the age range for that piece of equipment. Does that answer the first two questions? No?
The question regarding the Ninja V, as I believe we have committed to calling it at this point, is that at Village Oaks, when I've been in that playground, because that's where my youngest is, it's very slippery, and it appears that children are not using it, and I don't know if that's still the case or if that was just when it was initially installed. And when I'm saying this, I want to clarify, I'm not just saying like because it was hard for kids. It was slippery, and my children are able to do this just on like walls in my house, which is embarrassing to admit, but so my point is merely I don't believe it's a lack of skill. So my question is, I know this one's gonna be over the, not over mulch, I can't recall, the rubber. And so is that, do you think it has solved that issue? And I was trying to understand if that one at Village Oaks is more usable at this point, or you probably don't have that specific information, but that was kind of the premise of the question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess this is all news to me as far as the usability of that piece of equipment and there being concern. So I'm really not prepared to answer that tonight, unfortunately. I can look into it further.
The one thing that I will say, without the mulch being there, there will be less dust, of course, right?
That's what I was wondering, if it was like a dust issue.
Yeah, but one of the things that we did talk about was in the event that there's something that, does prevent students from being able to do it, there's probably even applications that can be placed on the material itself that would be safe for students and also allow that. So that's something that we can explore with both the Village Oaks piece of equipment as well as this one.
Okay, and like I said, it may have resolved as it's been used a little bit too. I just was surprised. That was something that a lot of kids I saw were very excited about at first and just went.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
And I'll follow up from my end too, taking your specific concern to the playground consultant and ask him as well.
Thank you.
So the Plant Moran Real Point recommends awarding the equipment installation for the Novi Meadows Playground totaling $1,133,781. And obviously that's there for your consideration this evening, which will allow us to be able to make the order and get ahead of some of the lead times for some of this equipment.
Mrs. Roney,
I just have a question on the basketball court.
we should get a recommendation before we get to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we have a recommendation? Ms. Commissioner.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the Novi Meadows playground equipment purchase and installation as presented, and awarding the contract to Ponchera Landscaping Structures in the amount of $1,133,781 plus a contingency.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Mrs. Wine. Mrs. Rowe.
I just had a question on the basketball court. Do we only have hoops at the two ends?
We do. We do. That's not to say that there couldn't be a couple of hoops added cross court.
Yeah,
But right now
that's
there's
what I was
only
wondering, because I know Mr. Cook brought up the fact that a lot of, I don't know, the boys, maybe boys and girls, I'm not sure, like to shoot hoops. And with only 2 baskets and 300 plus kids, there's not enough hoops.
They may not be playing full games. They just want to shoot baskets,
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, that's what we did.
Yeah. We can certainly look at it. The way the court is set up right now, there's no reason why there couldn't be additional backboards and hoops, maybe on the 2 ends, not the far ends, but each additional end. So it provides double the opportunity.
Thank you.
I can look into it.
Just to add, I would recommend that you speak to the administration on that building, as I think they probably have a better idea on what the usage pattern is. Something like
We did.
that.
They were part of the whole,
Yeah.
programming of this, but we can certainly ask that question and revisit it.
Mr. Mitchell.
I was gonna ask the same thing, so I'll just add, the Village Oaks setup, they have I wanna say 5, they have multiple hoops in that circular area. Even at Dearborn, they have, Deerfield, they have multiple hoops in their paved area too, so, that would definitely be a concern of mine if we were only going with just 2.
We're happy to revisit it with the administration and get back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that, because there are 4 right across the thing at Parkview and only 2 there. The other thing is, it looks like we are losing a baseball diamond here with this layout. And we talk with Parks and Rec and see what their need is, because I know over the summer, those 3 baseball diamonds that were there were used pretty regularly when they were available.
So one thing, one of them I know is being used for storage of a lot of the materials right now. You know, I don't know if we can speak to any of the construction equipment that's there. Is that planned to stay there through the remainder of this summer and into the new Novi Meadows build?
Yeah, I can certainly consult with McCarthy and Smith. I think as things continue to progress, our footprint's going to get smaller. Now, as far as timing of when we're going to be able to, we can certainly look at alternate areas, put it that way, but I'm happy to consult with our construction team and get back with everybody.
That we are, according to the site plan, we're gonna lose one.
We're going to lose one.
Any other questions or concerns?
I have just a question on procedure with this. So if we approve this today, we're approving the purchase. But that would not prevent the addition of like extra basketball hoops or things like that, or adjustments to it after the fact, is that?
We could always add things.
Typically, we have what are called bulletins, right? So you would have, you know, you are approving this at the highest level scope, you know, this plan right here. We're going to then investigate your questions, and so in the event that we could, if the desire is to add a couple more hoops or to not take up an extra field or whatever, those are things that we can kind of work on within this contract and make minor modifications to without having to come back to the board. So it allows us some latitude to be able to kind of make that happen. You know, and then of course, if you wanted to wait until we had all of those answers, we certainly could do that, but then it would create a dynamic where we might get behind on the lead time and things like that, so.
I'm not sure we would like to be behind on the lead time on a playground.
No, no, we won't. But I do think the, based on our, you know, experience here, we can make some modifications in here, and it's kind of like, okay, we're not gonna turf as much of this area, so we're gonna get a credit for that, but we wanna add a little bit, you know, add a basketball hoop, or, you know, there are minor modifications to all of these things that occur based on preference, staff, administrators, board, you know, all of those types of things, so.
Okay, so then if the administration for this building says, yes, more basketball hoops would be great, we have a way we can make that happen without it becoming an issue.
For
Okay,
sure.
wonderful. I'm
And I
happy to
think it's
support this.
helpful to know, you know, those items from you all tonight as well, that we can kind of take that back to the team, so.
Yes, it does say this is for the equipment, the installation, surfacing. So, there is limit. Okay, no other questions? We'll call question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Carries 7-0. We reach our information discussion section. Novi Meadows AV screen purchase. Mr. Micah.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Mr. Jason Smith, our technology director, to come on up. I know there are a lot of Jason Smiths in the district that are very prominent, so this is our technology Jason Smith, and he's gonna talk us through, you know, an equipment purchase for Novi Meadows.
So, hello, I have Matt McCarthy with me for IDS. He was alongside with the design of these areas, of these spaces for Meadows. There's the cafeteria and the gymnasium. It's a large format AV going in, your essential projector screens, projectors themselves, podiums. We essentially got with IDS, the architects, and local administration, and kind of find out what the needs were going to be for these spaces. And kind of came up with a plan and went out for bid on them and received all the bids, and now we've narrowed it down and come to present in front of you guys and see how, answer any questions you guys might have.
One piece to kind of also explain something that's going to be really exciting and unique is the new Meadows Gymnasium, the orientation is shifting. So for those of you that remember the old 5th grade gymnasium, right? The orientation is shifting so that it will actually be a north and south, which expands the seating capacity. It'll be the first time that the Meadows building has ever been able to have a location where all of the students could sit in one space. And so being able to have, say, a presentation or you know, an assembly of sorts in the gymnasium, being able to have the equipment in there to do that is obviously part of this. Also in the large scale cafeteria, And we did have a lot of conversation, I know prior to me arriving here in the district, there was a lot of conversation about, does the Meadows building, are we going to put an auditorium in there or a theater? The answer is kind of a hybrid, no, not exactly a full theater, but the cafeteria then could double as an area where there's gonna be a stage, and then you're also going to want, right, to have that screen, the audio visual equipment to be able to have, a meeting, a parent meeting, an assembly of sorts. And so those two large spaces require bigger screens, bigger projectors, those types of things. So, this is, a technology component. These will be bond funds, as a result of finishing phase 2, of the Meadows project, so. Questions for Mr. Smith at all?
Mr. Mitchell?
So I know historically the two biggest things with these large systems is the audio up to snuff where you can hear it well in the environment. So I'd be curious to know how the procedure is for making sure we get that right. And two, after a little bit of time passes, it seems like it's always hard to find the remote or the button, or who knows how to operate this, or is it unlocked or unlocked? Like, are we putting thought into like practical user interfaces where a person with reasonable amount of understanding and technology savvy could walk into the facility and be able to operate the equipment? So, thoughts on that?
Absolutely.
So two things. First of all, we did have an audio engineer from IDS, and we actually have one of the premier audio engineers that we work with that helped design this system exactly with that in mind. We want to make sure that we can fill, especially because of the shape of the cafeteria. We want to make sure we fill the whole space with both sound and the ability for people who may be on the sides to be able to view the presentation adequately. So that's all been designed into the system. In fact, the cafeteria is going to have a dual projector, dual screen system that you'll be, you'll be showing both screens will show the same thing. So no matter where someone's sitting in that kind of U shape. And then the other design feature that we added is, instead of remotes that get lost, we're putting a touch panel on the wall in both the cafeteria and the gym. And we'll have, so just like I think in some of the other buildings, some of the cafeterias in the elementary schools, we put a touch panel, and in the gyms in the elementary schools. So it can't get lost. It's bolted to the wall.
And you said like the usability behind it, they're going to be set up to be like one-touch systems. Activate on, off, up, down. What kind of presentations you want to have in there. You can preset the presentation. So these on the wall, the touch screens, they're all customizable. So we'll get an understanding of what kind of presentations they're going to be doing in there and having preset. So if someone just comes in.
Yeah, the default preset will be when you turn the system on, the screen comes down, the projectors come on, everything's ready to go.
Okay. And then the input for how you're going to, where the information's coming from that you're projecting, that's going to be fairly easy to access and to connect to as well?
In the cafeteria, we'll have a mobile podium and it'll be able to connect to two spots, either close to the stage area or farther back. So if you want to have someone presenting from the back, or if you want to have someone standing up front, you can do either one. And then in that podium will have everything that the presenter needs to connect, and it'll be a simple connection, either like at the front or in the back. And then same thing in the gym, there will be one spot basically where if you want to plug in a laptop or a device, you'll be able to do that.
And I'm coming from the perspective of the poor PTO parents that would want to have like a movie night or some kind of function.
Right.
It'd be some random parent that gets assigned it, never seen the system before, and has something on their laptop or whatever, trying to, and doesn't have any staff support. Like, how easy can we interface with these systems?
Yep. And down
So I
that road
appreciate
with people coming in and use the room, there's technology. Get them down there and get the room going.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm curious on the numbers the mandatory alternative number 1, what is that?
The mandatory alternative number 1 was to, in the gym, because it's a gym, and you're putting a relatively expensive projector in there, and the height that you want the projector at when it's in use, we asked for a scissor lift, basically, an automatic scissor lift that would raise the projector when it's not in use. What if we just put a fixed mount projector in there? So if we eliminated the scissor lift and put a fixed pipe mount in there, what would that reduce? So that's why you see most of them, and I think Digital Age probably made an error in their calculations and forgot to deduct or forgot to add back the manual or the stationary mount. So that's what that represents.
Are those numbers in the final number?
We are not going with mandatory alternate number 1. So
okay, so we will have.
You will have a
be
scissor
retractable.
lift. Yeah.
Okay.
If there's a target, you know, you get some pretty strong kids in elementary school. We felt it was better to. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll come to vote next
In February.
in February.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to owner's representative bid.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Micah.
Yeah, so in the 2019 bond, the district engaged the services of Plant Moran Cressa, who is now known as Plant Moran Real Point. We have started the process, and in fact, over the course of the next few months, I actually met yesterday. It was a quiet day here in the district, not a lot of people around, and I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Kling, and we started talking out and going through, looking at our next 18 months to 2 years, really, as you think about a November of 25 program. And one of the things that we know is that time is really moving. So we need to start getting on, looking at architects, looking at construction managers, looking at bond counsel, looking at financial advisors for the 25 program. So we started by soliciting bids for our owner's representative. We had 3 companies that showed interest. One company actually submitted a bid. That company was Plant Moran Real Point. One of the things that I think was nice about this particular proposal is that they held their same pricing model that they had in the 2019 bond. So they kept their percentages lower than what oftentimes are charged in other districts, just because of the longevity we've had with them in the program. My preference, and I know your preference as a board, is to consistently see things as information and discussion, followed by an approval at the following meeting. That is my plan for this evening. But one thing that we ran into a little bit of a discussion with yesterday as we started mapping out, the different timelines. We'd like to get started with RFPs and determining. We have a February 1st CPC meeting of the whole, committee of the whole, and we would like to start talking about potential ways that we could engage architects and design clients, or design partners as well as construction partners, and really getting Plant Moran Real Point started on some of those things ahead of next month would be to our advantage, but it's certainly not necessary. So it's there for your consideration tonight as information and discussion, because I know you typically like to see that. If there are some concerns or just an opportunity for you to kind of think through it, we'll just wait and we'll make the approval recommendation for approval at next month's meeting. Certainly, if there's not a significant objection to continuing our work with Plant Moran, there would be an opportunity for them to get started a little bit sooner on preparing for RFPing and getting bids started for our architects and construction managers. So that's a little bit of a dynamic just based on the calendar and when board meetings fall over the next month. So
Will that require a motion tonight to not do discussion any further than tonight?
It would be, it would require, if you decided to do that, if anyone on the board decided to do that, you would make a motion to move forward with them. If there was a desire to hold off, which is what my plan was, then that's fine as well. We can wait and do it. It's not gonna be a disastrous thing to wait, but.
But we don't have any proposals that were submitted.
That was gonna be my next question. Is there any alternative, or is it pretty much consideration of this one entity?
You're considering this one entity, or you could say we don't wanna move forward with this particular entity, and then we could go back out and try and bid again.
Okay.
So.
So I would make a motion then that we would continue with Plant Moran at this point.
Support.
So we have a motion on the table to continue with Plant Moran, made by Mr. Smith, supported by Mrs. O'Dwine. Discussion on it? Mr. Mena.
You know, I've had an opportunity, being on and off on the capital project committee over the years, to work both with Mr. Donnelly and the rest of the folks over at now Plant Moran Real Point. I've always appreciated working with them. I've always appreciated a lot of the work that they've done on our behalf, a lot of the money that they've saved us over the years, and just keeping us up to date on what was happening. Sometimes some of the news they had to deliver to us wasn't always the best, but it was great because we always know what was going on. And I would love to continue that relationship if we could, so I would definitely support this motion tonight as well.
And President Cook, if I could make a comment?
Sure.
My experience has been very positive, and I will just kind of personally say that coming from a district where they did not have the same opportunities for, bond funds and things like that, I engaged a lot in the bond program. And so coming here, I felt like having an owner's representative, quite frankly, was a waste of time and money, because we could manage that. And I'm telling you, that is complete 180 shift in my thinking since coming here. I don't think that it would be possible for a program of this magnitude to be handled by one, let alone two of us in our office doing this full time. And so the experience I've had has been exemplary. Obviously there's always disagreements and there's things that I wish were better in certain areas, and I think it's all a part of working together through the construction work to try and improve our facilities for our students and staff. But I've really become a strong proponent of having that service, and I think that they've done a great job, as Mr. Mena had suggested.
Mr. Mishner.
Yeah, just one follow-up question. So we did put it out for bid, and Plant Moran was the only one that we received back. It was basically
We had
summary?
interest from 3 companies.
Mhm.
They were the only company that submitted an official proposal.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a little comment, piggybacking on Mr. Mike. I love that you just admitted that you were wrong there. Besides that,
Good point.
It's in public record.
That's right.
yes, exactly. We've had some really, really strong, amazing bond programs over the years in 2014 and 2019. And just to kind of share some insight being on this board and watching, in the past, I think that although we had owner's rep, we had, we run a really lean and mean cabinet who works really hard and tirelessly on behalf of this district and does an amazing job with their departments, but still they have a lot of responsibilities. And so I think in the past there's been times where some of those cabinet members did try to take on a lot and do some of that back work. I wouldn't say alongside, but maybe in place of the owner's rep, instead of allowing them to do the work they've been hired to do. And it just wasn't as efficient as it has been over since our last bond. And so I think that's great that we are going in that direction, that we're keeping an owner's rep and that they can efficiently help us run a great bond program, because we are doing great building and wonderful, innovative things here around our district. So.
Mrs. Roney.
Okay, I of course am very happy, to support this, but I don't mean to put you on the spot, Devin, but what do you feel?
I want to work here the rest of my career.
Instead of Devin or Kevin?
No, Devin, but sorry.
But we got Kevin's
But we're
input.
happy to hear that as well.
I do have a question for Kevin when he's here.
Okay.
I would have to mirror what Superintendent Mike has said. When you're doing construction and projects at around $30 million a year, and you know that's a lot of work. That's a lot of accounting. That's a lot of budgeting. That's a lot of planning, and you know they have been nothing but great to work with. So, I would mirror that.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, are you familiar with the proposal that was made?
Yes.
Okay, can you come to the podium for a quick second?
Uh-oh.
I know the last time we went through this, there was a lot of discussion about design prime.
Sure.
If you guys would handle that.
For sure.
Or it would be handled by our administration. And that was one of the issues that we ran into in this last bond. So is that included in this proposal?
Absolutely. We have design prime approach included. We have technology oversight that we're kind of, you know, operating under right now. That's all included as part of our proposal right now.
So it's back to being a full owner's rep rather than having your hands tied and
Correct.
going into a knife fight.
Correct.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. That's basically my question, because, you know, we did have people that thought they could handle a lot of this without your help and without your company's help.
I appreciate the
think they
commentary
found
from the
out
board.
Real quick that wasn't the case, so,
It's all included.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
I also have a quick comment. As much as I delighted in Mr. Renka's revelation that he had learned something new, which I think is wonderful. I would like to compliment Plant Moran as well, because one of the things I experienced as a new member of this board was the big delays with the Village Oaks playground and that equipment taking longer than anticipated. And I really appreciate the willingness to learn and to adjust behavior and, you know, make sure that the Meadows equipment is ordered well in advance. So I think that, to me, a strong partnership is where, you know, feedback's provided, things are adjusted on our side, their side, and we all can work together to make sure things are as seamless as possible. So thank you, Mr. Donnelly, and I'm very happy to support continuing this relationship.
No other questions or comments? Let's call the question. We have a recommendation on the table. Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 7-0.
Thank you very
I
much.
get to work.
They'll be working on it tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, that brings us to item C, the 2024 School Building and Site Bond Series 3.
Yes, excellent. So this is the process that we need to go through for the board to authorize the ability for us to sell the third series of the 2019 bond, which actually will now be called the 2024 Building and Site Bond Series 3. But I'll let Mr. Kling talk a little bit about this process and give you some insight, and then be able to answer questions you might have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Micah. So this is the legal documentation and the resolution that needs to get passed to basically give Mr. Micah and myself the ability to sell the bonds when the time comes. So in the specific parameters that's spelled out in the legal document. So how much, who's going to be the underwriter, all of those good things. Now we are keeping the same team that we've had in the last two series, so we're going to keep Stiefel, PFM, and JP Morgan. But other than that, it's kind of spelling out what that third series is going to look like, the timetables and the rules required to do that, and then also really it's giving us the opportunity to sell the bonds when the time comes.
Any questions?
There's also, I will just add, there's another signature page that's going to be going out today. That's for you guys to sign now so that we have your signature on hand in case you're not available when the time comes. So that can be signed at any time. That doesn't have to wait.
And this will be, this was planned. This is the final 55 million from the 2019 original issue. This 55 million, we're hoping to sell and get in place in June of 2024. So if you were to vote on this resolution in February, our team would have plenty of time to prepare the necessary documents. And then it actually is kind of an, I mean, for people like Devin, it's fun. And I enjoy it at times, but it's an opportunity for, you know, you're watching the markets. And so what Stifel will do is they'll find out when is the right time. You're looking at a particular day where the market may be up or down, and they may say, hey, let's wait till tomorrow, and, you know, all of that kind of thing. So it's kind of an interesting thing where you're figuring out when the right time to sell them is. But certainly a series that size, we'll have no problem selling them. There'll be some good representation, and so that'll be for your consideration to approve in February.
Questions? We're gonna literally get the bond where board secretary has to sign 50 million of them again, or?
I believe so, yeah, so it'll be an exciting day. And again, there is some strategy involved, right? I mean, these are big transactions, so you wanna make sure you do it right and you time it right, so.
Devin,
Last time you spoke about a very exciting meeting that you referred to as the Super Bowl. Might there be a sports analogy for this process as well, or do you need to think on that?
Oh, this is way more. This is way bigger.
Okay.
No, there's multiple crux here. You only do this a couple times in a decade. So.
Yeah.
This is like the Olympics.
It was like the Olympics.
That's a great
Well,
analogy.
is it like the Lions winning a playoff game?
Oh, it could be like that.
No, not that. That's on another one.
It's America. Okay, sorry.
It's 30 years. My dad's only seen one playoff win in his life. So.
So you spoke of timing. How does timing play into, because my understanding was always if you issued bonds, we collect the money that we issued them for. Is it more like selling and buying stocks where you have a target, but you could actually collect more or less than what the actual amount that you were targeting for is?
Yeah, and we deposit the funds into various called MyLaugh accounts. Mr. Kling can talk a little bit more about that, but you're trying to earn interest, right, on the money that you sell. The you know, certainly the hope is you try and project what the market conditions are at the time of sale, and then you're hoping to get another $2 to $3 million on your investment, which is just taking our community's money further than what, you know, so, you know, that is the goal. But I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I will say there's a lot of investment bankers and underwriters that make a lot of money on these types of things, and the reason is because you're talking percentages on large numbers. And so there's a lot of different levers you can pull in different situations, whether you're a qualified or non-qualified, and there's a lot of different avenues you can get lost in, but yeah, there is some strategy when you actually have to press the button. There is some strategy that goes along with that to make sure that we're doing what's best for the taxpayers.
So if done right, we could get a multiple on the taxpayer's investment.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing on the timing to your original question is you're always looking at cash flow, right? So you have a scope of work, and so as we think about finishing up the 6th grade house and phase 2 Meadows, and then we're moving into phase 3 high school, and then we have the high school athletics and the activity center, right? All these things. You're looking at when your projects are scheduled to kick off, and then you have a relative amount of cash from the last series that you sold, right? And now you want to try and time that, so now you're hitting your new series to allow for that infusion of cash that you can continue to do construction, pay the contractors, and so on and so forth. But as you can see, it takes 4 or 5 months to plan for a sale, and so you have to do a lot of forward planning, and that's one of the things that Plant Moran Real Point has helped us, and Devin's been great in this area too, but it's something that, you know, there has to be people watching this stuff pretty carefully to make sure we're hitting those targets. Yeah.
Does our rating have any effect on the ability to sell these?
It depends if you are, again, that goes back to a qualified, non-qualified, whether you're gonna take the state's rating or not. I know our rating is excellent, so I'm almost positive we would have, again, there's a lot of professionals that get paid to do this, and I don't wanna say anything out of turn, but, we have a great rating here in Novi, and it definitely helps with rates. I will leave it at that.
Our rating is at or better than the state's rating is, to be able to help put some context on that. So a district that maybe doesn't have as much credit or doesn't have as much track record in doing this, they would have to go through the school bond loan program, which requires them to go to the Treasury Department, and they go through that process, which is there for districts that don't have as much bonding capacity as a district like Novi.
It costs us less to get the money. If we invest it correctly, we can earn more. So we could win on both sides of the equation.
You got it. Thank you. I should have asked you from the beginning. So. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kling. That brings us to Superintendent's report. Mr.
Thank
Micah.
you. I'd like to just say thank you to the Village Oaks and the Novi virtual teachers. I know they're not here anymore, but it's always nice to have our teachers come and visit the board meetings. I'd also, even though this was about the board, I appreciate, just the creativity of our students, our staff from all the buildings that took time out of their day to think about how to celebrate the board. I know that you all appreciated it, but know that that was not me, that was them, and they came up with those ideas completely independently, and I'm always blown away by what they come up with. So I appreciate that. I also want to just a couple quick ones, and then I want to talk about something that's a little bit more intensive. But the other couple quick things on snow days, there's never anyone that's really happy. So I got a lot of emails over the last couple days, and we have a really robust process that we go through. I was talking with Dr. Ruskin, and some of the people that she talks to do not believe that we actually meet with a meteorologist. We have a member of the Detroit National Weather Service. We do a lot to try and pinpoint and track what are the different weather events and when are they coming in. So, the last 2 days, we don't typically have cold days. And I will say, the first cold day we had wasn't as cold as we were projecting, but sometimes you just don't hit that right. We're trying to predict when the storm was coming in on Friday, when we got all sorts of snow, and hindsight's always 20/20. So know that we do try to make the best informed decisions. We want kids in school, we want people here, but we want them here safely, and so we're trying to do that. And so it's always a challenge, in these things. But I do enjoy our students, and some of their lobbying efforts and the things that they do are a lot of fun and make it a little bit enjoyable. Also exciting news to report, just today we did bid openings for the 6th grade house program. As you know, we had bids solicited for that. Really excited. I have not digested the full bid tab document, but we had good good participation, meaning we had a lot of bidders for the programs. We got it out at a good time. Also, it appears that we're going to be even better than we projected on our budget. So that's all very positive in a time when we're constantly talking about more cost and inflation and all these things. So again, a really good thing that we're going to be talking about over the course of the next month. So look for the board meeting in February for us to bring you some of the results of those bids, so that we can get that process started and kicked off. Another one that Mr. Geremini spoke about at our last board meeting, and he wishes he could be here tonight, but one of the things that recently came across was the pupil accounting manual. And that came across relatively at the same time that we learned that there was a unique election this year. We have a primary election in February, February 27th to be precise. And as you recall, we talked about the possibility of having the pupil accounting manual allowing us to do some unique scheduling and be able to actually have a day that is virtual. And there's a cap on it and there's some requirements, but we could actually have a virtual school day and count it as one of our days of instruction. That would have to have a plan that was approved by the board, but I wanted to just kind of get a temperature check from the 7 of you. I think that this is a great solution for holding an election that would otherwise be trying to be held during a school day. and the security concerns that might come with that. Some other districts have already called the day off, and so they're trying to use it as an act of God day. I'm not sure how that's gonna work when the audit comes through. There's other districts that are going to try and run the election during school. And for us, I think that would not be a preference of our families. And so this kind of timing wise makes a little bit of sense, which would allow us to actually have a day of instruction. It would be school, so it's not like a snow day as we talk where there's no school. It is actually a school day. Teachers would be teaching, students would have their devices. So what I would like to propose is that the team, and Mr. Germini's team has already started to kind of prepare a draft. They would give kind of a plan, including that date where we would be able to say, this would be a day that our board, or that our students are gonna be virtual. Obviously, we'll work through the logistics, but I know we don't meet until February 22nd. So I would be likely sending you a draft of that plan as early as next week so that you could have time to look at it and review it. I just wanna make sure there's no major objections before we start moving in that direction as we try to figure out how to accommodate an election that was obviously not known a year and a half ago when we settled our contract, right? And we have to make some accommodations kind of on the fly.
Go for it.
Can I ask a question? Is there, and you may not know off the top of your head, but 22nd seems a little bit like yikes, it's like real close to the day, what if we all just went rogue and said, no, we're not gonna let you do that? So is there a committee meeting of the whole where we could potentially take action? So maybe that's something that you and Mr. Cook can look at to see, maybe a curriculum meeting of the whole, so if information gets to the board, we could take action before the 22nd of February.
I think that would be great. I think the sooner we could start communicating with families the plan for that day, the better. You know, cause it would be nice for them to be able to make arrangements, if they have to for childcare and things like that.
That would be something we could also call a special meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we get it in time. Mr. Commissioner.
So am I understanding the choices, without being creative in how the current rules are structured, the choices are either you hold an election while school is going on in school facilities, or we do the virtual day?
Yeah, or we roll the dice and try and call it an act of God day and just cancel school, like a preemptive snow day that we know is gonna come on that particular day, you know what I mean, so.
And that may not fly when we do the accounting.
Correct.
So the only two for sure bets are virtual day or try and manage all of our students in all our buildings and have the public come in to vote.
Right, and so in order to do that, we obviously would have to make sure there was a secure, there'd be extra security, we would have to have a really tight plan that the parents could feel confident that there wasn't gonna be, you know, hundreds of people coming in and out of the building. And my recommendation is to not do that, because I think it will be very difficult for us to be able to provide that level of assurance. You know, it's an inconvenience, but actually this option gives us some flexibility, so, you know, I do agree with Dr. Ruskin. I think it could be an opportunity for us to kind of talk about whether we look at asking for a special meeting to be scheduled, or, you know, that way we can get ahead of it and get the communications out. But it's been pretty much right before the holidays that we kind of learned of some of these things all coming together at the same time, so.
Just the 28th, February 28th, right? Was that the date?
27th, I believe.
27th, so it's a Tuesday?
Yes. It's the presidential primary election. So.
What would you want?
Is there any specific reason we could not just approve that this evening while we are all still here?
Well, the one thing that I would like is to be able to have Mr. Germini's team put something together so that you can see the plan. Okay. There are some considerations which I don't necessarily think are going to be on this particular version, but there could be utility use of this. For example, at the high school, when you've got juniors that are taking the SAT, and we have, you know, the other 3 grade levels, what are they doing and how are they, you know, learning on that day? There may be some opportunity to use this plan as a way to give them instruction while keeping the building calmer for the people that are taking the test, right, and those types of things. So, I know that he has the intention of having something, with his team put together relatively short order. So I'd love for you to be able to see the plan. I'm telling you, the big kahuna of the plan is essentially that particular day. And so, I will have something to you very quickly, but I just think, you know, even if we held, a bit of a meeting after the, CPC meeting of the whole, and, you know, that's coming up February 1st. You know, there's opportunities, I think, to make it so we're not having everybody come back, but we might be able to piggyback it onto a meeting that we already have.
Okay. It is one school day that we have this urgency with. I personally would be very comfortable with you and Mr. Jeremy determining what that day would look like. But if you feel it's better to wait till we have a full plan, I mean, we can do that. I just don't want you guys in a jam.
I appreciate that. Actually, I appreciate that a ton, and I thank you for saying that. One of the only really reservation I have is the pupil accounting manual requires that the board have a resolution document that essentially lays out what the plan is. So I would just want to make sure you have time to see that, and then you could vote to approve it, and then we can put that, to be able to count that as a day of instruction. So, yeah.
Very good. So you'll just continue to work through what this plan will be
And then you'll have something really soon that will be the actual plan, and then we'll try to, Mr. Cook and I will talk about a time where we could maybe convene to deliberate and vote on that particular issue.
Sounds great, thank you.
Yeah. That's it for me.
And this plan is not just for that day, it's for any other time that the district would feel that it was necessary. So it's not just, we're not just solving one problem, we may be solving
Correct.
a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Once we vote on that, we're good.
Yep, and it is by school year. So the idea would be, now that we have this option in the manual, say, this summer of '24, if we're looking ahead to the next calendar year, you could approve that plan in the summer in advance of the year, so, you know, everybody knows what those dates might be, if there are those dates. So each school year will have a different plan that would be approved if we're gonna utilize any of those pieces.
One more time really quick, in case anyone did not see last meeting. This is not for snow days. This is for things like if there's like AP testing going on, or the selection, or planned events, correct?
You're 100% right, and
Just
so.
don't want us to get a bunch of emails
No,
about the
snow
current
days
events
are,
for children.
snow days are days off from school, and these would be planned school days, but done virtually.
Thank
Yeah.
you for the clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. This brings us to board communications. Dr. Carino.
You mean administrative report?
Yeah.
Administrative report, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just want to thank the NEF for supporting the therapy dog program, and so we are very excited to be able to bring these animals to our buildings and support our students and staff, and so I appreciate their support in helping us, you know, solicit the funds to be able to support the program. So that's it for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Kling.
Trying to throw me off.
I like mixing things up every once in a while.
I appreciate that. I was gonna get you guys, you know, the HP 12C financial calculators for Board Appreciation Day, but thought otherwise. I know how much you guys like reverse Polish notation, but no, it feels like a week ago before that we were here, and so before then there was, you know, a couple snow days. So I just want to thank Mike Dragoo, his finance team, and BioClean for all the work they do cleaning the sidewalks and the driveways, the parking lots. This, you know, between Friday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there was a lot of work that went on and a lot of salt that went down. So I just want to thank them for all their hard work.
Thank you, Mike, and his finance team.
He meant
Maintenance team. Oh, I'm sorry. Maintenance team.
Finance team's been good shoveling too.
Yeah.
They're all working around here.
Yeah, Steve appreciated working from home, I can tell you that.
So, okay, thank you, Mr. Kling. Okay, this is board communication. Does any board member have anything of interest?
Just me and Jason went to Oakland County School Board Association meeting last night. And Brad,
Banasic.
there you go, gave us some riveting information, which I have a PowerPoint if anybody wants it, about all the new legal stuff and everything. But you know, me and Jason were talking, and none of it sounded new. So I think we've already gone over a lot of it. But the one thing that did come up was snow days, and some guy that put on YouTube singing with his high school principal about snow days. So I don't know if you know who that is,
I have an
Superintendent?
idea. I have an idea. I've been asked many times about that.
Well, yeah, so it came up again. So just to let you know, you are infamous or famous, you know.
A one-hit wonder.
There you go. So,
Thanks.
but
Glad your
anyways.
singing career did not derail your superintendent career.
Yes.
I was very
Really
fortunate about
disappointed for us
that.
all.
I was fortunate.
Any other communication? Seeing none.
I
You don't have
approve.
anything for us today? Okay.
Oh,
Motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned by Mr. Mitchner,
Support?
supported by Mrs. Roney. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Can stay here.
If you're opposed to being
We are-
staying.